All right, so today we're diving deep into something pretty unusual, at least for us.
Yeah, should be interesting.
We've got all these notes about something called the kindness credit card.
Interesting name.
Yeah, right? Basically, it's a credit card that gives you, well, the listener, I guess, more cash back the kinder you are.
Hmm. That's, how would you even measure that?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Sounds kind of subjective.
Yeah, totally. But from the notes, it looks like they've thought about that. They've got like a whole system.
A system. Like
It's
what?
like different tiers of rewards. Plus, they're going to do peer reviews and even random audits.
Uh,
Yeah, to make sure nobody's like, faking it.
oh, so that's how they're going to try to measure kindness.
Looks like it. But before we get into all that, we should probably talk about who came up with this whole thing in the first place.
Right, so who's the mastermind?
Her name is Lorraine, and she's, well,
A philanthropist, right. But the notes say she's kind of, what's the word?
unconventional.
Yeah, unconventional. Apparently, she told her staff to come up with the craziest ideas they could think of.
Yeah, I read that too. But there were some ground rules, right?
Right, and the rules are interesting because they tell you a lot about their philosophy.
Okay, so like what kind of rules are we talking about?
So first off, the idea had to make a real impact but couldn't cost a fortune.
Makes sense.
But then it also had to generate buzz, get people talking.
Okay, I like where this is going.
And the big one, the idea had to actually reward kindness. Not just like a pat on the back, but financially.
It's like she's trying to figure out if you can actually pay people to be better people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a question philosophers have been debating forever, right?
totally. But it seems like Lorraine is less interested in the debate and more into just like seeing if it works.
Testing it out.
Exactly. And that's where this kindness credit card comes in.
So this was like her big idea.
It wasn't actually her idea, at least not directly. It came from one of her staff members.
Really? So what, did the staff member like win a prize or something?
I think they got a bonus. But from what I read, this person was already super dedicated to helping others.
Oh, I see. What were they doing?
Apparently, they volunteered for years at a nonprofit that reads to the blind.
Wow, that's incredible. Talk about dedication.
Right. That's got to be thousands of hours.
Absolutely. And based on these notes, that kind of person would get the highest rewards with this credit card, like 8% cash back on everything.
8%. That's a lot.
It is. Imagine the impact that could have for someone who spends so much time helping others.
Makes you wonder, how does this work for like the average person? You don't just swipe your card after helping someone cross the street, do you?
No, definitely not that simple.
So how does it work?
Okay, so when you apply, you have to explain all the kind things you do regularly.
Regularly.
Yeah, and then the foundation looks at your application and decides what percentage of cash back you get. It starts at 2% and then goes up from there.
I bet people are going to try to exaggerate how kind they are.
I was just thinking that, but that's where the peer reviews come in.
Oh, right. You mentioned those earlier.
Yeah, so other people you know have to vouch for you to say that you really are a kind person.
That's actually pretty clever. Makes it a lot harder to cheat the system.
Exactly. But what about people who maybe don't use credit cards that much?
Oh, yeah. Good point. What if you're on a fixed income or something?
It seems like they thought about that too, which is good.
So they have like special rules for people in those situations.
They have a whole category just for people with limited incomes who are super kind. They get a whopping 30% cash back.
Seriously, 30%.
Yeah. It's almost like you're saying your kindness is super valuable even if you don't have a lot of money.
I like that. But what's to stop people from, buying things for others just to get the rewards?
Well, from the notes, it seems like Lorraine actually thought about that too.
Really? What'd she say?
She basically said that even if someone's just doing it for the cash back, at least someone else is benefiting.
Oh, so she's okay with it as long as it leads to more kindness.
Seems like it. Plus, think about the social dynamics. Everyone will want to be friends with the most generous people.
To get some of that kindness.
Right. Like, kindness could become this social currency.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. So we've got Lorraine with her vision and apparently $50 million to make it happen. But turning this credit card from an idea into a real thing is a whole other challenge.
Totally. Like, how do you even get enough people to sign up for this thing?
And more importantly, which bank is going to partner with them on something this unusual? This isn't your everyday credit card,
Good point. So what'd they do?
Well, it looks like they called in a data expert named Jamal to crunch the numbers and figure out the logistics.
Sure. Well, okay. What did he come up with?
So according to the notes, Jamal is like a rock star in his field.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, and he thinks they could get like 500,000 users in just 3 years.
Not bad for a completely new idea.
Right. But Jamal had another trick up his sleeve, a way to potentially get even more people on board. Referrals. Classic, but it works. He's using social proof. People are more likely to try something if their friends are doing it.
It's like that monkey see, monkey do thing.
Exactly. But in this case, it's for a good cause.
Makes sense.
And of course, Lorraine loved it. She's all about creating a ripple effect, one act of kindness leading to another.
It's a pretty powerful idea. But what about people who maybe don't have a computer or aren't that good with technology?
Another great point. They definitely didn't want to leave anyone out just because they're not tech savvy.
So what was their solution?
Another team member, Yuki, had a brilliant idea. She suggested partnering with libraries.
Libraries. How would that work?
Well, think about it. Libraries are already community hubs, welcoming places for people from all walks of life.
I see what she's getting at. The librarians could, help people apply for the card.
Yeah. She even suggested setting up kindness kiosks and kindness book clubs to get people talking about it.
A kindness book club. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But did anyone have concerns about this whole thing? I mean, it sounds great, but were there any potential problems?
Oh, absolutely. There were definitely some worries.
Like what?
One team member, Eduardo, was worried about people who don't have good internet access or who aren't comfortable using technology or dealing with banks.
That's a really good point. You can't just assume everyone has the same access to technology and is comfortable with financial stuff.
Exactly. So they had to come up with solutions to make sure everyone could participate.
So what did they do?
Well, Lorraine decided to put some money specifically towards outreach and support for those communities.
Okay, so how would that work in practice?
They're planning on having workshops led by librarians and community organizers to help people apply in person.
So people can get help if they need it.
Exactly. But knowing Lorraine, I bet she had another, even more out there idea.
Oh, I bet she did.
She wants to create a kindness van that can travel to different neighborhoods.
A kindness van.
Oh.
Like a food truck, but for good deeds.
Exactly. It would bring information about the program and help people apply on the spot.
Okay, that's pretty awesome.
It really shows how much she wants everyone to be able to participate.
So they've got the outreach part figured out, but there's still one big question. Which bank is going to partner with them on this? It's not exactly your typical banking product.
Right. They need to find a bank that not only supports their vision, but also has the experience to handle this kind of unique project.
So did they find anyone?
Luckily, Jamal had done his research. He found a small bank in Portland called Oddity Bank.
Oddity Bank. Never heard of it.
They're known for supporting unconventional projects, and they even have an app that teaches financial literacy skills to people with low incomes.
It's like they were made for each other.
Right. Lorraine gets her quirky credit card, and Oddity Bank gets to be part of a potentially groundbreaking initiative.
It sounds like a match made in heaven.
But now the question is, will Oddity Bank actually agree to this partnership?
That's a good question. And what happens if they do? We'll find out in part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, so we left off with the big question. Will Oddity Bank actually go for this?
Yeah, it's a pretty wild idea. But even if they do, there are still some things that worry me,
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, how do they actually measure kindness? It's not like you can just put it on a scale.
Exactly. What's considered kind to one person might be totally different for someone else.
Right. So how do you create a system that's fair for everyone?
It seems like they are aware of that challenge, at least.
Yeah, from the notes, it looks like they put a lot of thought into it.
So what are they doing to try and make it fair?
Well, first off, remember those peer reviews we talked about?
Yeah, where your friends have to vouch for you.
Right. It's not just about what you say about your own kindness, it's about what other people see and can confirm.
So it's kind of like a checks and balances system for kindness, huh?
Exactly. But even with that, I can still see some potential problems.
Like what?
What if your friends just want to help you get more cash back, even if you're not really all that kind?
That's true. People can be biased, especially if it benefits them.
And that's where those random audits come in.
Oh, right. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, so basically they'll randomly check some applications to make sure everything's legit.
I guess that makes sense. Sort of like a quality control check.
Exactly. They might even interview people to double check.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
They're definitely taking this seriously, which is good.
But even with all those safeguards, there's still the human element, right? People make mistakes, sometimes unintentionally.
You're right. There's always that possibility. But from what I've gathered, it seems like they're approaching this as an ongoing experiment.
So they're not expecting to get it perfect right away.
It seems like they're prepared to adapt and make changes as they go along.
I like that. It's good to be flexible and learn from your mistakes.
Definitely. But let's zoom out a bit. Were there any concerns about how this kindness credit card might affect society as a whole?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, there were some interesting discussions in the notes about potential unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, like what?
Well, one concern was that it might actually make inequality worse.
Hmm. Okay, I can see how that could happen.
Right. People with more money and resources probably have more time to volunteer or donate to charity.
So they'd automatically get higher rewards.
Potentially, yeah. And people who are already struggling might not have the same opportunities.
That doesn't seem very fair.
It doesn't, which is why they created that special category for people with limited incomes. Remember, the one with 30% cash back?
Oh, yeah, right. That's a good way to try and level the playing field.
It is, but it also brings up another question. If you're rewarding people for being kind, does that somehow cheapen it?
Ooh, good point.
Yeah.
Like, is it even real kindness if you're getting paid for it?
Right. It's a classic philosophical debate.
It's a tough one. I mean, we give kids gold stars for good behavior, right? Is that any different?
It's definitely a blurry line. I don't think there's an easy answer.
And it seems like even Lorraine's team acknowledges that.
Yeah, they're not pretending to have all the answers. They're just trying to see what happens, testing out different ideas.
It's like a big social experiment.
Exactly. And it'll be interesting to see what the results are, but are there any examples of this kind of thing working in the real world?
You mean like other programs that reward people for good behavior?
Yeah, exactly.
There.
Actually, there are. Some cities give discounts on public transportation to people who volunteer.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And some places even reward people for reporting pollution or doing things that are good for the environment.
It's like they're trying to make it fun to do the right thing.
Exactly. And the kindness credit card fits right into that trend.
So it's like a new, high-tech way to encourage people to be better.
It is. But as we've talked about, it's not without its challenges.
Yeah, there are definitely some things they need to be careful about.
Right. Making sure it's fair, figuring out how to actually measure kindness, grappling with the philosophical questions. It's a lot to handle.
It sounds like they're walking a tightrope.
They are, but they seem to be going into it with a good mix of optimism and realism.
So they're hopeful, but also prepared for things to go wrong.
Exactly. They're ready to learn and make changes as they go.
And that's what makes this so fascinating, right? It's not a simple solution, it's a journey.
It is. They've got the vision, a dedicated team, and potentially a banking partner that's ready to try something new.
So what happens next? How do they actually make this thing a reality?
Well, assuming Oddity Bank is on board, there's still a lot of work to do.
Like what?
They need to figure out all the legal stuff, how to market this to people, and fine-tune the application process.
And don't forget about the technology side of things. Building a website, an app, making sure it's all secure.
Right. There's a lot of technical stuff, too. But they seem to have a good team in place.
They're clearly passionate about this idea.
They really want to make the world a kinder place.
It's a big goal,
Yeah.
but I admire their ambition.
Me too. And even if it only has a small impact, inspires a few more people to be a little kinder. Wouldn't that be amazing?
It definitely would. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what Lorraine and her team are doing, but now let's turn it around. What about you, the listener?
Yeah, what would you do if you had a kindness credit card? What kind of things would you do to earn those top-tier rewards?
It's a good question, and one we'll explore further after a quick break.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about, well, you, the listener.
Yeah, and what you would do with a kindness credit card.
Right, like what would you actually do to earn those big rewards?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, what do we actually consider kind?
Yeah, and where do we want to put our energy, right?
Is it like looking at yourself in the mirror?
Totally. Like,
Huh?
am I actually living up to those top-tier kindness standards? I think for me, personally, I'd probably focus on environmental stuff.
Oh, yeah. Like what kind of things?
Maybe organizing a neighborhood cleanup or something. Or like donating to an organization that plants trees.
That's great, thinking about the big picture, the whole planet.
But it also makes you realize how many chances we have to be kind. Like every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
Little things, right? Holding a door open, listening to a friend who's having a tough time.
Right. It all adds up.
Even just giving a genuine compliment to a stranger.
And that's what Lorraine seems to be going for with this whole credit card thing, right?
Yeah, making us more aware of those little opportunities, the everyday moments where we can choose to be kind.
It's not about those huge once-in-a-lifetime gestures.
Right. It's about building a habit, strengthening that kindness muscle.
And those little acts can add up to something much bigger, like a ripple effect.
Exactly. And imagine if this credit card actually takes off.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
People comparing their cashback tiers like it's a competition.
That'll be something else.
Could it actually change how we think about kindness?
It's a pretty wild thought.
It is. But even if it only makes a small difference, gets a few more people to be a little more thoughtful.
Even that would be a win.
Right. Because ultimately, the world needs more kindness, more people looking out for each other.
Absolutely.
And that brings us back to that question we talked about earlier. Is it really altruism if you get rewarded for it?
That's a tricky one.
It is. But maybe it's not about being purely selfless all the time.
Right. Maybe sometimes people need a little push in the right direction.
It's like that saying, you can lead a horse to water.
But you can't make it drink.
Exactly. But maybe a little incentive helps.
Like a sugar cube.
Yeah, something like that.
And who knows, maybe those rewards eventually become less important.
Right. Maybe people start to just enjoy being kind for its own sake.
Feeling good about helping others, that sense of connection.
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the kindness credit card.
It's been quite a journey, right?
We've covered a lot, from Lorraine's vision to the potential impact on society.
Definitely a lot to think about.
But now, we want to leave you with one final thought.
What other ways could we encourage kindness besides just a credit card?
Yeah, what other creative approaches could we try?
How can we make compassion and generosity like the default setting?
It's a challenge, for sure, but it's one worth tackling.
Because the world doesn't need more cynics, right? It needs more people who believe in kindness.
People like Lorraine, who are willing to think outside the box.
People who dream big and try new things, even if they sound a little crazy at first.
So go out there and be kind, and maybe you'll inspire someone else to do the same.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And that's it for this episode. We'll see you next time.